And Zach, we hinted at it. The injuries, man. Okay, we have 3 major superstar Achilles injuries in one postseason. Does Adam Silver have a problem, and does he need to make changes? Zach, the mic is yours.
He does have a problem, Will, and it's funny. After the Haliburton injury, it just hit me like, man, we've had a lot of superstar, big-time players get hurt in the playoffs over the years, and I knew it was a lot, but considering that it happened in Game 7 of the NBA Finals the other night, I just said to myself, you know what? I have to look back and see how bad has this exactly been? And I have some notes I wrote down that I wanted to share. So here we go. Let's start it off. In 2018, Chris Paul gets hurt against the Warriors in the conference finals. That Houston team was up 3-2. He gets hurt. We know what happens. The Warriors win that series. They go on to win the finals. In 2019, the Warriors are playing the Raptors in the NBA Finals. Both Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant get hurt in those finals. Toronto ends up winning, but we ended up asking ourselves, like, man, if the Warriors were healthy, odds are they probably would have won that series. Then in 2020 was the bubble. The players had 4 months prior to that. They had those 4 months off, so there were no major injuries in that season. In 2021, that was the shortened season, not a normal season. No major injuries in the playoffs, so we're good there. But then in 2022, the Milwaukee Bucks, they're defending their championship, and Chris Middleton gets hurt against the Boston Celtics. He doesn't play in the last 2 games of those series in the second round. Boston wins Game 6. Boston wins Game 7. So that Bucks team didn't have the opportunity to defend their title. In 2023, the Eastern Conference Finals, you have the Celtics facing off against the Miami Heat. Jason Tatum rolls his ankle minutes into that game, and Boston ends up losing. Miami gets the win. You ask yourself after, man, if Tatum was healthy, could Boston have won that series? And then if you remember, too, Jimmy Butler got hurt against the Knicks in those playoffs. I believe it was Game 1 against Miami. So he wasn't 100%, and the Heat end up losing to Denver in those finals. Then last year, 2024, you mentioned it, the Celtics, during their run to the NBA Finals, they play Miami without Jimmy Butler. He got hurt again. They play the Cavaliers without Donovan Mitchell. He got hurt. He doesn't play. And then Haliburton gets hurt in the playoffs as well. And I feel like that Haliburton injury last year was important because if you remember, he was going all out. He got hurt in the regular season last year, but came back early because he wanted to get above that 65-game regular season threshold to try to make All-NBA. That's one of these new rules that Adam Silver put in. Play in the regular season, you got to play 65-plus games to be eligible for these awards. And then, of course, you look back at some of the injuries this year with Dame Lillard, Jason Tatum, and Haliburton in Game 7. I feel like Adam Silver has a problem because it feels like every year we're asking ourselves, what would have happened if this guy doesn't get hurt? And you need your stars out there on the court in the playoffs. Like imagine in the NFL, if, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, the biggest stars in the league just didn't play in the playoffs. That would be a major, major problem. And I think the NBA has one here. Now, the easy solution is just, okay, cut some regular season games. But we've been calling that on the show for years. We know that's not going to happen. The owners, that's easy revenue for them. I feel like the first step Adam Silver has to do is realize, like, okay, the regular season, that 65-plus game threshold for awards, that's not the best thing for the league. Obviously, you want to make the regular season matter, and I know they've been playing 82 games for a really long time based on the history of the league, but it's just a different era of basketball. The game has never been quicker. The game has never been more skilled. The game is pretty physical. The defense is there. So I do think Adam Silver has a problem on his hands that he really has to figure out because one more major injury in the playoffs. Game 7 of the NBA Finals, literally the basketball world is watching. This is a rock bottom situation when it comes to injuries in the basketball playoffs.
Yeah, definitely a rock bottom. But look, to me, the way how I look at it, and I thought about this topic long and hard, trying to look at different angles and what makes sense to me logically and not emotionally. And I came up with the assumption that injuries are just out of Adam Silver's hands. You look at these Achilles injuries, right? And we can start off there, especially these 3 superstar players. Primarily, I just want to single out Tatum and Haliburton because they were actually on their way to massive performances in those games prior to injury. Tatum had that, 42-point game 4, I believe it was, a game against the Knicks. And listen, Tatum has a industrious career, but I thought that was probably the best game I've ever seen from him. With all due respect, he was on his way there. And then obviously the unfortunate injury. We talked about Tyrese Haliburton cooking up in that first quarter of Game 7, 3 triples, and he looked like he was on his way to a massive Game 7 performance. Right? Who knows how that could have altered the game or not? But and you look at the ramifications for next year, right? The Knicks straight line to the finals. I'm gonna obviously talk about my Knicks later on. Take for 99, just giving y'all the heads up. But it's there for the Knicks now, and the Eastern Conference doesn't look that great anymore. So, no pun intended, this is going to be the Achilles heel of the NBA. No pun intended. Now, look, I will always continue to be a big proponent of the NBA shortening the regular season to 65 games, mainly to combat load management, mainly to heighten the urgency of competitive basketball, right? But the truth is, a long season is not going to fix this. With all the pacing and spacing, okay, with all the dipping and diving, right? The stopping and sliding, with all the way how the game is being played, it's about the style of the game that really matters. And I think for me, when you want to look at it, from a scientific perspective, I'm not a doctor, okay? The only doctor I know is Dr. Dre. I'm not a doctor, all right? And look, there's a pipeline from a calf strain to Achilles tear. It's a pipeline. We've seen it so many times, and that's because scientifically, biologically, the Achilles tendon connects the calf muscles to the heel bone. Halliburton, as any superstar should want, is to play that Game 7 because your team has a golden opportunity to win the NBA Finals. But guess what? That's your choice. You knew that if you went out there, you was going to put yourself at risk for further injury that could have been catastrophic long term. You went out there. We saw Kevin Durant in the NBA Finals who had a calf strain. He decided to go out there. He was actually doing the most in the locker room. He was dipping, sliding, dancing, fall back, foot forward, knowing he had a calf strain and still went out there. And guess what? He got an Achilles tear. We hate to see it, obviously, but he chose to be out there. My thing here is if you really want to stop these Achilles injuries, how about we have these teams decide whether or not it's worth it to go out there if you got a player that has a calf strain, knowing that there could be a high probability that they could suffer an Achilles tendon. How about education, folks? Okay, stop sending people out there to learn everything on the fly, be the guinea pigs. How about a simple education? How about allowing these players to know the risks involved with playing on a calf strain and how that could literally alter their career? This is the worst injury you could have as a professional basketball player, especially in today's game. So at the end of the day, as much as I want to come here and just hammer at the NBA to shorten that regular season because I have my own motives, I wish it was 65 games. I'm not going to use this to fulfill that argument. I think this is more so about education, knowing the risks, and you choosing that you want to go out there and put yourself at risk. And that's my take.
It's just really tough because if you're the Indiana Pacers, this is a franchise that's never won an NBA championship before. You're literally one game away from doing something that's never been done. And I feel like if you would have told Tyrese Haliburton, look, an injury happens, but your team would have won, he would have said, okay, it's worth it. But it just sucks. There's no easy answer. It's definitely a huge risk, but you have to think like these guys are so competitive. They've been working the whole year to get to this specific moment right here. And if you're Rick Carlisle, if you're Kevin Pritchard, their GM, and Tyrese Haliburton says, I'm good to go, I'm playing no matter what, it's really hard to tell that guy no. And it's unfortunate what happened, but Tyrese Haliburton wanted to play and he wanted to go all out for his team. And it just sucks. There's no easy answer. I just think the one step that Adam Silver needs to make here is get rid of that 65 plus game award threshold, because when there's money on the line, I don't want to see players risking injuries in the regular season like what happened with Haliburton last year to just get hurt in the playoffs. This is the second playoffs in a row this guy has gone down, and that could be because he was rushed back from injury last year to get over that 65 game threshold to try to make All NBA. the bottom line is with the NBA regular season these days, it's just not that relevant. This Pacers team is a prime example of that. As long as you get to the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference now with these injuries, which is wide open, as long as you get to the playoffs, you're going to have a chance. And I would just hate to see a guy in that position where he's thinking to himself, okay, I can make generational changing money by coming back and playing 65 plus games and being winning an award, getting first team All NBA, and just having an injury because of that. I think that would be my first step. I agree with you that, shortening the regular season at this point is probably just unrealistic. We've been calling for that for a while and it just hasn't happened. It's probably never going to happen. But I think that would be a good first step by get rid of that threshold rule, because at the end of the day, the playoffs are your most important product.
I mean, look, you look at the Tatum injury. I don't believe Tatum had a prior leg injury prior to that Achilles tear, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he could have played one game in the regular season and had that injury. It was just a freak accident. It happens. We can't take away the nature of the game. When you look at the NFL, that's why I talk about education. Concussions are a big thing. But now these players are educated. Whether or not they listen to it, that's on them. But they know that when they play and strap up and put on a helmet, that their likelihood of getting a concussion is going to happen. But you can't stop it. That's the game. You live and you take what that's why players retire early. That's their own, advised decision. That's why you see a lot of players retire early. That's my point. When you look at this, you got to be an education here. That calf strains, if a player get that, the likelihood, because the bone is connected, of you getting a serious injury that can literally not only put you at risk for this season or the current season, but the following one. We have to educate these players on that and then let them make the decision of how they want to do it. So I think for me, when you look at Tyrese Haliburton in that clip, I mean, literally, why he's doing too much. You have a calf strain, just shoot. All that putting that torque on his legs when he's trying to drop to the basket. I mean, I'm not saying that don't be competitive, but what I'm saying is relax. He put too much on his body. I mean, at the end of the day, he could affect the game as a playmaker because he's so good. You talked about it in your first lap of the first topic, or second lap rather, about how good he is as a playmaker, and that's his strength. When you're injured, you gotta be adaptable in ways to stay on the court if you're going to play and put yourself at risk. And I thought he kind of felt himself, knocked down those couple triples. You saw him talking smack to the crowd, and I think he wanted to really go off. And obviously, I don't blame him, but you got to play with a little bit more precaution, and that's why I say education is the key. But another point that I want to bring up real quickly here is that when you look at these how Adam Silver could combat that. Once again, I don't think it's possible that he could fix an issue that could happen at any time. These plays, they play the game of basketball. The game is a fast-paced game. There's a lot of torque that they putting on their legs. And that's why I think players back then, although had some of these injuries, we've seen Kobe Bryant with an Achilles injury. We've seen other players have Achilles injury. It's not like this some COVID that came out of nowhere and taking everybody's soul and all that. No, it's always been here. But I do think the way how the game is being played is definitely a big part in that. And I don't think you can shorten the season and that cures that. Unfortunately, we've seen it happen a lot. We've seen it 3 times in the same postseason. That means it's something that teams are going to have to try to avoid, and players are going to have to try to avoid if they can avoid that. And we are going to Zach. Any last points before we move on to topic number 3?
I think I'm good, man. I'm just fascinated by, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about this, but I'm fascinated by how the Eastern Conference and the hierarchy looks next year, because all of a sudden, look, before this game 7, no matter what the result would have been, I thought the Pacers deserved to be the favorite based on what they've done in these playoffs and the depth of their team. But that's out the window without their top guy in Tyrese Haliburton. And now all of a sudden you look at Cleveland, a team that's very talented. They had a great regular season, but They have to prove they could win in the playoffs. Darius Garland is hurt. Did you even see the rumors that they were like the sleeper wild card team in the Durant
Kevin
sweepstakes?
Durant,
Like there were
I've seen that.
some conversations about that. Can Jared Allen and Evan Mobley play together? Who knows? I love what Orlando has done. I think the Desmond Bane is a big time needle mover trade for them. You have the Knicks in the mix. I think Detroit is a team that's firmly in the mix, but they need one more big piece this offseason. I'm curious to see what they do. Boston's kind of out the window with the Tatum injury. The Bucks have nothing outside of Giannis. Philadelphia is a wild card team. We'll see what they do with that number 3 pick tonight. But look, after the Tatum injury, you thought, okay, the Eastern Conference is pretty wide open. Indiana, based on what they've done in the playoffs, they probably deserve the benefit of the doubt. But now, without Haliburton, that's out the window. And the Eastern Conference has never been more wide open than it is right now.
I agree with you. I think it's wide open. And I think when you consider Kevin Durant staying, which we're going to transition to, staying in the Western Conference, it makes the Eastern Conference, anybody's game, really. And heads up for grabs. Like I said, I think my Knicks is going to be in the driver's seat, as they should be, to get to the finals. But I think the Western Conference is clearly the superior conference. And how many times we've said that over the last 10 years, right? And that's going to be another year of that. So these injuries suck. I hate to see it. And unfortunately, fingers crossed, we don't see more of it.